Chapter 36 Occulta Locus. Ino, Sota, Prispin, Rylan, Nagini, Axiom, and a representative of the Savanti government stood shoulder to shoulder as a Caravaneer shuttle glided to a landing just outside the hastily assembled administration building. The aquatic Caravaneer crew blinked in the sunlight, dazzled. Aranoe reluctantly shook Ino's hand before shooting a glance at Nagini.
"Fools, one and all," Aranoe said. "My men have identified the Destican fleet coming this way. If you fight, you will not survive."
"We're not going to fight," Ino replied. Aranoe raised an eyebrow.
"Surrender? Really, Esperanta, after that incredible show you put on, terraforming a world, mounting a desperate defense, embarking on this bizarre construction project in the center of the colony? After all this work, you're just going to give up?"
"We're not going to fight, and we're not going to surrender," Ino said. "We're going to hide." Aranoe scoffed.
"Plenty before you tried to hide from the Desticans. It is impossible to deceive their telepaths."
Ino and Sota shared a look. "We think you might be wrong about that," Sota said. "And we all agreed that Ino's plan is worth trying. If you want to stay here and take shelter with us, we have room for you and your people." Aranoe shook her head.
"The Caravaneer fleet is mostly intact. We're going to make a run for the Hodranus wormhole, escape into Coalition space. As soon as we get the Tennesilsi back, we're leaving. Once my people vacate the ship, the slavers can have it,"
Nagini snarled, folding her arms. Aranoe looked like she wanted to protest, but seemed to think better of it.
"I suddenly have 250,000 seats available for the journey," Aranoe said. "Perhaps we can negotiate a transit service?"
Ino and Rylan looked at one another. "Can you move the entire colony?" Rylan asked. "Including the refugees, we have about 8 million people on the ground right now." Aranoe shook her head.
"Moving a sentient being across space is a logistically difficult operation," she said. "The humans seem to have understood that. My scanners showed your command ship Marathon could have held 7,000 of your own people, but you flew with only half that number. The most my fleet can move is 500,000, though with a substantial fee, I could pack the cargo tighter."
"We've only got a couple weeks left until the Desticans get here," Prispin pointed out. "I would take multiple trips to evacuate everyone. Some folks would still be here when the clock runs out."
"No deal," Ino said. "I'll have our allies clear out the Tennesilsi and return it to you."
Aranoe boarded her shuttle, and as soon as it lifted off, everyone turned to Ino.
"As soon as the Caravaneers start to leave, launch the decoys," Ino said.
"Do you think the Desticans will interfere with them?" Sota asked.
Prispin shook his head. "They'll probably try to investigate, to figure out what's going on. But by the time they figure out we use them as pawns in the deception ploy, it'll be too late." "Beninato, Captain Quinn, go to the hospital and get the stuff you need," Ino said. "I'll be waiting in the admin building."
Sota and Rylan quickly traveled to the hospital where Elodie and Azarin were recovering from their wounds. Elodie was awake, and Savanti doctors were keeping her under observation, making certain her new cybernetic lungs were working correctly. "It's time," Sota told her.
"Oh, 5 more minutes," Elodie pouted.
She reached into the canvas bag beside her and produced a splintered fragment of bone. It was one of the curved horns which normally grew from the forehead of one Araj Zilfalin. Elodie handed the horn over to Sota with extreme reluctance. "This is for the best anyway," Sota said. "Interstellar laws of war prohibit you from taking body parts as trophies, you know."
"But he tried to rape Ino,"
Elodie reminded him in a stern voice.
"I know,"
Sota said. "Trust me, this is how we're going to get him back. When we're done, he won't want to talk about Destican supremacy for months." Inside the Savanti prison, Arash was subjected to yet another round of interrogation. The topic was always the same: what communication passed between himself and the Destican flotilla making its way here? Every time the question was asked, he remained silent. Arash held his tongue mostly out of rage. Elodie had snapped off his one remaining horn, so now he had 2 painful, bloody stumps on his forehead. Instead of talking, Arash brooded about all of the many ways he was going to mutilate Elodie once he got his hands on her. And in the back of his own mind, he mentally replayed his last conversation with Shaman Paranold, about all of the information the old telepath had found in Ino Esperanta's mind. Paranold not only learned the secret code words and signals used by Coalition officers, he had discovered Astro Creator Azarin and the significance of the nuclei growing on her body. He closed his eyes and focused his mind. Arash knew his brother Golbein would travel with a shaman of his own. With 2 telepaths in the star system, it was only a matter of time until Arash was found. He would make his thoughts slow and transparent to make it easier for the shaman to find him. A few days later, Ino and her team gathered to watch the departure of the Caravaneers. The flotilla lifted off from its staging area just outside of the source and rose into the morning sky, casting large shadows as they went. With a deep rumble, the now empty slave ship Tennesilsi did the same. Ino and Prisbin watched the vessel depart. "Is everything in place?" Ino asked. "Ready to go," Prisbin replied. "Also, can I file just one more complaint about the name? Operation Occulta Locus is not going to look good on the AAR." "Sota picked the name, not me," Ino laughed. "Next time we plan a large-scale military deception worthy of those Serani girls from the last war, I'll let you name it, okay? Let's go find Axiom." Axiom was at the local spaceport, but the android did not look the way Ino had left him. Axiom had finally vacated the body of the android known as AJR and was now using a sleek, synthetic body built specifically for him by the Savanti authorities. "Both commandeered vessels are ready for the mission, Captain," Axiom said. Over his shoulder, Ino could see the Destican warship Kailasha and its sister ship, Ambika. "Remember, this is all about deception and subterfuge," Ino told him. "You must not be detected by the enemy until the proper moment." Axiom nodded his understanding, but Ino pulled him aside, to a far corner of the hangar where they could speak in private. "Did you do the other thing I asked?" Ino said in a low voice. "Yes," Axiom replied. "All of the organic crew has been replaced with android or synthetic volunteers. I suspect I know the reason why you have done this, though I would much prefer to hear you vocalize your own reasonings." "You know where I stand on AI rights," Ino whispered. "If any of the military androids assigned to Marathon were to become MIA while Kailasha is running its mission..." "You would not be able to take action immediately, due to the situation here on the planet's surface," Axiom finished for her. "Yes, Captain. I will keep that in mind." "Good luck, Axiom," Ino finished. "And to you, Captain Esperanta," Axiom replied. Ino shook hands with Axiom, and the two parted ways. Back at the launch pad, Ino found Prisbin signaling for the rollout of the commandeered enemy ships to be paused. "Why are you stopping the launch?" Ino called out to him. "Last-second change in the passenger manifest," Prisbin called back. "Don't worry, he's running back to us now." Prisbin pointed to the far end of the spaceport, where a single android was running as fast as it could along the tarmac, a nondescript red backpack clutched in its hands. "Is that Delegate?" Ino asked. "Yep. Axiom cleared him to join the mission at the last minute," Prisbin said. He saw the expression of worry on Ino's face and added, "I spoke to them both, Captain. He's on the level." Ino got the very strong sensation that Prisbin was not being honest with her. She would have raised an objection, but Prisbin mouthed the word solidarity at her, and she understood. Prisbin had just pulled a similar act of subterfuge as herself. She bit back her question and directed her voice to Delegate instead. "Run! You're going to get left behind! Hustle! Move!" Delegate sprinted across the spaceport, his servos making a loud humming sound as he went. Delegate flashed a look of gratitude at Prisbin before running up the Kailasha's boarding ramp and vanishing from view. "That's the last one," Prisbin shouted. "Let's get these birds in the air. Captain, clear the tarmac." Ino followed Prisbin back to the space traffic control tower. "Kailasha, this is Control. Report status," said a Savanti traffic controller. "Kailasha, ready to launch," replied the voice of Axiom. "Ambika reports the same. Request permission to take off." "Granted. Conduct mission parameters and return to launch point," said the controller. With a loud roar, the two former Destican warships launched into the air. Kailasha took the lead, streaking ahead of her sister ship. When both frigates were clear of the atmosphere, they activated their cloaking devices and vanished from view. Ino felt a tap on her shoulder. Prisbin was holding a radio receiver to his ear, looking concerned. "Something's happened," Prisbin said. He gave the radio to Ino. "Captain," said the voice of Chief Medical Officer Zapata, sounding strained. "You'd better get down here." Up in space, Axiom did not stop to think about how he was making history as the first AI to be commanding officer of a Coalition starship. Instead, he focused on the mission at hand. According to the sensor display, 29 heavily armed starships were flying across the star system at best possible speed. The enemy fleet would be close enough to use their weapons in just 2 weeks. It would take a few days to reach the position laid out in Ino's plan, which was codenamed Operation Occulta Locus. Axiom double and triple checked the sensor data and found the place Ino spoke of. It was just above the gas giant Acrux 4. Axiom adjusted the sensor systems to make more sense of what he was looking at. Ino wanted him to hide both Kailasha and Ambika inside the sensory blind spot created by electromagnetic forces just above the gas giant's magnetic north pole. From there, the next stage of the plan could begin. Because the ship's whole crew consisted of AI and synthetic life forms, there was no need for Axiom to speak. He transmitted a series of orders to the crew electronically, and they were carried out at once. Kailasha and Ambika rigged themselves for silent running, shutting down most of their sensors and communications equipment. Hiding beneath their cloaking fields, the two frigates started the short but crucial journey to the magnetic north pole of the gas giant Acrux 4. Meanwhile, Ino found herself back at the Savanti hospital where many of the Marathon's wounded, including herself, were being treated. Chief Medical Officer Zapata was standing outside of the emergency room talking to Rylan, who looked like he was going to explode with fury. "I'm sorry," Zapata was saying. "I've never treated anyone from her species before. No one has. Even the Savanti here are stumped." "How many of my people are in there with her?" "About a dozen of your doctors," Zapata said, "and they're just as much at a loss as we are." Rylan turned his head and spotted Ino. "The Astro Creator," Rylan said. The tone of his voice said it all. "Oh no," Ino breathed. A bustle of noise caught Ino's attention. An armored car had pulled into the emergency entrance, while a convoy of military vehicles positioned themselves around it like roadblocks. "Oh, come on!" Zapata sounded exasperated. "A deathbed is no place for politics." Two Savanti soldiers opened the car doors, and Oracle Aster emerged. The Savanti ruler looked agitated. "Am I too late?" Oracle Aster said. Rylan raised his arm in salute. "She's still alive, sir." Oracle Aster looked at Rylan and Ino. Then he sighed. "Well, seeing as you are the officer I assigned to protect and escort the Astro Creator, it only makes sense," the Oracle said. "You as well, Esperanta." Ino and Rylan followed Aster into the emergency room, where Savanti soldiers stood guard outside the door to one of the private rooms. Astro Creator Azarin was lying on her back, but it took Ino a moment to realize she was in a conventional bed. Azarin's leaves had turned brown and were quickly falling off. Savanti and human medics made uncomfortable facial expressions whenever the leaves crunched underfoot. Ino noticed that Azarin was lying flat on her back. All 3 of her nuclei were gone now. "Astro Creator, is there anything we can do for you?" Oracle Aster said. "You've contributed so much to our people's scientific endeavors over the years. Perhaps we could find another of your own kind, someone who can help you." Azarin shook her head. No. The plantoid spoke in a wheeze. "It is my time, old friend. Nothing more." Oracle Aster moved to speak with some of his medical team. Meanwhile, Azarin gestured to Ino and Rylan. They drew closer. "I'm so sorry," Ino started to say, her voice shaking. "Friend, this is no time for sorrows," Azarin croaked. "I am not sad. Because of what happened here today, another world will thrive." "Another world?" Rylan asked. "Delegate," Azarin hissed, "with my blessing." Ino froze. "He's got the nuclei," Ino spoke in just barely more than a whisper. Azarin nodded slowly. "I ask one last favor from you," she wheezed. "Delegate needs the astro creation parameters, data from the vivarium. He knows to come back for it once he is sure the last nuclei is safe. Protect the vivarium. Guard it. Keep it safe." Ino and Rylan held the dying Azarin by the hand. "Nobody sets foot on this moon without our say-so," Ino replied. "You have our word," Rylan added. "I have gladly given my life," Azarin said in a strained whisper. "Thank you, friends." Azarin became still. Leaves fell from her arms in silence. Her eyes remained open, but no longer saw the 2 faces above her. Astro Creator Azarin was gone.